In the high-stakes world of international politics, a bounty is never just a number, it's a statement, a threat, and, sometimes, a countdown. On August 8, 2025, the United States quietly made an announcement, but the implications were anything but quiet. The reward for information leading to the arrest of Venezuelan President Maduro had been doubled to $50 million, one of the largest bounties ever placed on a sitting head of state. For context, the reward for Osama bin Laden was $25 million. This isn't about money, it's about sending a message. We are coming for you. But to understand why the US would go this far, you have to understand the man thereafter, and the long, tangled road that brought Venezuela to this point. Act 1. The rise of Maduro. Maduro's rise to power was unlikely, even by political standards. Born in 1962 to a working-class family in Caracas, Maduro's early career wasn't in politics, it was in music. And as a bus driver, he eventually became a union leader, which brought him into the orbit of Hugo Venezuela's fiery populist president. Saw loyalty in Maduro, that loyalty would prove to be his ticket to power. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, Venezuela was flush with oil wealth, used that revenue to fund massive social programs, winning the loyalty of millions of poor Venezuelans. But he also built a political machine centered entirely on himself. When Chavez died of cancer in 2013, he named Maduro as his successor. To many, Maduro was a placeholder, someone who would carry on a socialist Bolivarian revolution without the charisma or popularity to truly lead. But they underestimated him. Act 2. The fall of Venezuela. When Maduro took office, Venezuela was already facing trouble. Oil prices had begun to slide. The country's economy, built almost entirely on oil exports, was brittle. Years of corruption and mismanagement had hollowed out its institutions. Instead of diversifying the economy or reforming the system, Maduro doubled down, printing money to cover spending, tightening control over the courts, and purging dissent from the military. The result was catastrophic. By 2018, Venezuela was in the grip of hyperinflation. Prices were doubling every few weeks. They became so worthless that people used it for crafts instead of cash. Food shortages left supermarket shelves bare. Hospitals ran out of medicine. Millions fled the country, creating one of the largest refugee crises in modern history. And still, Maduro held on. Act 3. Dictatorship. In all but name, international observers began to call Maduro a dictator. Elections were riddled with irregularities. Opposition leaders were jailed, exiled, or banned from running. Street protests were met with tear gas, rubber bullets, and sometimes live ammunition. The military became the backbone of Maduro's power. In exchange for loyalty, senior officers were given control over lucrative sectors, from food distribution to mining to oil contracts. It was during this period, in 2020, that the U.S. Department of Justice accused Maduro of narco-terrorism. Prosecutors alleged that he and senior officials conspired with Colombia's FARC rebels to ship tons of cocaine into the United States. The U.S. put up a $15 million reward for his arrest. At the time, it seemed symbolic. No one seriously thought Maduro would be captured while still in power. But the bounty was a seed, one that Washington may have known would grow in time. Act 4. 2025. The pressure builds. Fast forward to 2025. By now, Maduro's grip on power was absolute, at least on paper. In January, he was sworn in for a third term after the 2024 presidential election, an election condemned internationally as fraudulent. Independent monitors pointed to voter intimidation, media censorship, and an electoral commission stacked with loyalists. In May, his party swept the parliamentary elections after the opposition boycotted again. Every lever of the state, from the judiciary to the electoral council to the armed forces, was firmly under his control. But control does not equal stability. Act 5. The economic stranglehold. In April 2025, the Venezuelan National Assembly passed an economic emergency decree. It was a direct response to fresh U.S. sanctions targeting oil, gold, and mining exports. The few industries still bringing in hard currency, these sanctions hurt. Oil output fell. Revenue collapsed. Even the black market, the underground economy that kept elites supplied, began to dry up. Maduro's government leaned harder into deals with Russia, Iran, and China. But those relationships came at a cost. Selling oil at steep discounts, paying in political concessions, and deepening dependency on foreign patrons. Inside Venezuela, the squeeze was obvious. Power outages became routine again. Inflation ticked upward, and resentment simmered just beneath the surface. Act 6. The Argentine embassy crisis. Then came the diplomatic flashpoint. In Caracas, 5 political dissidents sought refuge inside the Argentine embassy under international law. Embassies are sovereign territory, but that didn't stop Maduro's security forces from surrounding the compound. They cut off supplies. No food, no medicine, no visitors. What began as a political asylum case became a siege, and a public relations nightmare for Maduro. Images of the trapped asylum seekers leaked. Argentina condemned the blockade. International human rights groups piled on. For Maduro, this wasn't just about 5 people. It was about making an example, showing that no one, not even foreign soil, was beyond his reach. For the rest of the world, it was another reminder of how far his government was willing to go. Act 7. The bounty doubles, and then the U.S. made its move. On August 8, the State Department announced that the bounty for Maduro's arrest was being raised to $50 million. It was a staggering figure, not just because of the amount, but because of what it symbolized. A reward that high isn't for show, it's bait. A signal to those closest to Maduro there is another option. Because in politics, loyalty is rarely absolute. It's a transaction, and $50 million can buy a lot of transactions. Act 8. The game behind the game. Capturing a sitting head of state is no simple matter. Maduro is protected by an inner circle bound to him by power, money, and mutual incrimination. If he goes down, they go down with him. But history shows that the cracks often appear from within. Dictatorships fall when insiders decide the leader has become more of a liability than an asset. Sanctions, economic collapse, diplomatic isolation, these are pressures designed to make that moment come sooner. By doubling the bounty, the U.S. has just changed the equation. Every general, every intelligence chief, every member of Maduro's security detail now knows the price, and they know the number could be theirs. Act 9. The uncertain endgame publicly. Maduro will frame the bounty as proof of U.S. aggression. His propaganda machine will spin it into a rallying cry. His allies abroad, Cuba, Russia, Iran, will condemn it as imperial overreach, but in private the whispers will start. Who can be trusted? Who's thinking about the money? Who's already talking to someone on the outside? This is the quiet war. Not fought on battlefields, but in backrooms, whispered over secure phones, calculated in secret bank accounts. The bounty isn't a bullet. It's a wedge, and wedges have a way of splitting even the tightest circles apart. $50 million isn't just a price on Maduro's head. It's a test of loyalty. It's a crack in the armor. And it's a reminder that in the world of power, nothing lasts forever. The question now isn't whether Maduro will fall. It's whether this is the move that finally makes someone inside his circle decide to cash out.